Ghana Integrity Initiative just this morning released a statement um, talking about the 2022 Corruption Perception Index. And it turns out Ghana scored 43 yet again for the third consecutive year, out of a possible clean score of 100. That puts us in the 72nd position out of 180 countries and territories included in last year's Corruption Perception Index. Okay, so it was released today by Transparency International. There's a lot of detail in there, which obviously we'll be tapping into for conversations in the coming days and weeks. But really, a score of 43 for the third time in a row reflects a lack of progress, and that is perhaps the most polite way to describe it. A lack of progress in Ghana's fight against corruption, doesn't it, Raymond?
Yes, it is. And the difficulty is that we and others in the sub-region have been in the same position. So we are not alone in the 43 zone. Countries like Benin, Senegal, and South Africa are all basically not making the progress required at this stage. Now, the bigger problem is that it's not a bigger problem, I the top performers in the region are the interesting ones. Seychelles, followed by Cape Verde and Botswana, then Rwanda, where Burundi and Equatorial Guinea, South Sudan, and Somalia have done the worst and are disgracing the continent. There are those who have already raised questions about whether or not this should be something we should celebrate. So we're basically like in the middle of it, right? You know, when there's a score, we are rank ordered and you come up in the middle, but you've not made progress. So all the efforts you put into it, and if for 3 good years you've not made any progress, should we be celebrating what you've been doing, or we should clearly be indicating that you need to do more? And not making progress means a lot. It may mean that you have not done any extra thing to improve your situation, or you are supposed to improve, but the things you said you wanted to do has not yielded the needed results. All the same, anytime that we are either not making progress or not improving our corruption perception status, it means that there's something fundamentally wrong. Top performers are linked to not only the peace of the country, it's also linked to how they protect human rights and also how they progress as a country. So let's not delink these things. You are not making meaningful progress because some of these things happen. And how they do this is largely based on the very criteria that has been established by the relevant institutions. Basically, how do people perceive not only state institutions but the access to some of the basic services in the state? In a state like country Ghana, the examples that have been given right from, and see, 3 years includes the year of COVID. Let's not forget that, because this is for 2022. So from 2019, 2020, and 2021, then the 2022 report is what we have this year being published. Think about how we have dealt with COVID and the very things that comes out, the COVID report, the Auditor General's report, and the main things that people are actually confused about in this particular state. This is also the period that we've made not so much progress in our finances. That's got us into the pit that we are talking about today. So they are all interlinked. I'm not sure we should be excited that we've not made progress. I'm not sure what we should be patting ourselves on the back for saying that, well, I mean, we didn't decline anyway. But to me, when you don't make progress, it means that fundamentally, it's either you're not doing the right things or what you're doing is not yielding the needed results. And that's what we should be checking.
Right, so let's get on to the phone lines now.
Yes, Memory Awelana Addah is the programs manager at the Ghana Integrity Initiative. They, of course, are the local partners of Transparency International. Mary, it's a pleasure to speak to you. Good morning.
Oh, it's a pleasure to speak to you too. Good morning, and good morning to the rest of the team.
So, in the grand scheme of things, if throughout 2022, government actually did things, spent money all towards the fight against corruption, and we ended up not moving even one space, does that mean that everything we did was ineffective and therefore a waste of money?
Not necessarily. What it means is that the data sources which have been captured in the CPI for 2022 signify that the issues around bribery, diversion of public funds, the use of public office for private gain, nepotism in the civil and public service, and also elements of state capture continue to remain relevant and have not been dealt with exhaustively. I say exhaustively because if it is done, then certainly those who are responding to the various surveys would mention as much. Again, remember that most of these surveys speak to issues around integrity in governance, so government's ability to enforce integrity mechanisms. We all know that we continue to speak to issues around integrity of public office and the various how ineffective the various mechanisms are. Reporting mechanisms for people to even report is a challenge. We see that even when people have reported, the reverse is the case. We do not see any action. And when action is taken, it takes forever. Then we have issues around prosecution of corrupt officials, which is very key to the CPI index not going well. Red tape and excessive bureaucratic burden on the people is another issue. There is so much of this in the various public offices. And remember, this is a survey that captures opinions of business people as well as academics. And so it's what they see and experience they are talking about. The existence of adequate laws on financial disclosure and conflict of interest. We all know conflict of interest in Ghana is not criminalized. The prevention of saying we cannot deal with as much because we continue to hear what happens when people go to charge. And then also issues around access to information. As a people, we know that even though the commission, LTI commission, has been very proactive, the various institutions which are supposed to ensure that they give information freely and give it in the quantities we demand and on time as well, in the reproductive shape that we want, it's not done as we all want. And then issues around legal protection of witnesses, of corruption. This morning I heard you speak to issues around protection of journalists from brutality. We also know that those who are investigative journalists who are investigating corruption continue to remain on the front burner when it comes to assault, when it comes to the lack of safety of these people in our state. And so necessarily we've been stagnant. And it's not just for 2022. You remember in 2021, we scored the same, and in 2020 as well. So over 3 years, we have remained where we are, as the accounts would say, meaning it is worrying, and we should all, as a people, begin to interrogate this issue.
Now, in interrogating this issue, you've discussed with us why we are where we are. How do we ensure that we improve? How do we ensure that we get, to the top, we get into the 60s, 70s, and 80s?
Thank you, Winston. We have had opportunity to discuss this with government. I think in 2017 or 18, when this current government took power, the president at the time wanted to know how the CPI is calculated and how we can, as the people, make some progress towards this. And as I mentioned, all those indicators, if we do the research of them, we would be making significant gains. But for this year, we mentioned some issues around the putting on the agenda the issue around the conduct of public officers. If we are able to pass this bill, which has also taken so long in, I think, about 3 parliaments now, we would be able to then speak to the issues of asset declaration, which remains a challenge for us because we do not do verification and we also do not publicize the assets and also liabilities of public office holders. this must be put on a priority list of government so that we can also then criminalize conduct such as conflict of interest and then other administrative conduct to ensure that people are sanctioned. Again, we talk about government to promote economic development and reduce those barriers that hamper investment, and also address the issue of bureaucracy so that we hear issues around school placement being sold to the highest bidder. These are issues that should be dealt with. Another indicator that is serious, which needs to be dealt with, is the issue of audit. The independence of our Auditor General or the audit institution, and also let me add all the other anti-corruption institutions of states. We want to say that if we put in place the mechanisms where the Auditor General is citing people and making stronger recommendations for their sanctioning, and then the PAC as well picks these and ensures that people recommendations are made to the Attorney General for people to be sanctioned. That would be important. Then also to add that the surcharge and disallowance regime should also be taken seriously. We do not see much being done about that as we speak. Then the issue around the security, which is linked to this year's theme. We see that there are a lot of vulnerabilities in our state because we are surrounded by countries which have these threats which have manifested. We do not live in an island, so we should be very careful. So measures should be taken in that regard to ensure that we strengthen our defense and security system, and also ensure that the perceived politicization of these institutions, particularly when it comes to recruitment and procurement, we should be able to deal with them so that the perceptions out there are disabused. And then we do not have citizens thinking that our security architecture is compromised. We know that the issues of protocol layers, and then we take people to go into these services, and we have a lot of issues around procurement. They should be dealt with. Illicit trade in arms and all those should be seriously dealt. And then one thing I would want to add, which we continue to make a call on, is resourcing the anti-corruption institutions. Of particular reference, this year we are talking about the Office of the Special Prosecutor. We all know that in 2022, he requested for an amount of 170. 170 was approved out of the 1 billion he asked for. And unfortunately, as at August or thereabouts, he had received just about 10 million. And so if we want commitment, we want to show that we want to fight corruption. We want to show that it's not just rhetoric, but it's action. Then the Office of the Special Prosecutor, who has shown with the very little resources that he can do the work, if we resource him and give him the needed support, then we will see some results. Currently, he's shown that he's done the NDA, he's done the DCE nominee, and he is also working on others. So he did GRE, and we've seen some results coming out of that. So we all need to ensure that our call and our advocacy is towards government resourcing all the anti-corruption institutions by giving a lot of attention to the OSP to ensure that he fights corruption for all of us.
Right. Mary, in just 30 seconds, poverty creates scarcity, and scarcity is the atmosphere in which corruption really thrives. We're entering a year of austerity. We're going into an IMF program. It will be a bit optimistic to imagine government will be able to spare more funds than they had last year for anti-corruption initiatives. So in this environment, do you expect us to do better in the anti-corruption index this year, or are we likely to slip?
That would be conjecture, but from the data sources, if you have looked at it, we need to up our game if we want to make some significant progress in the fight. Remember, it's not just with the resources, but other indicators. And so when you take the fight against corruption, we have prevention, we have public education, and then we have the investigations, prosecutions, and sanctioning. And we know that some of these are already ongoing. So it is for government to then put in place measures that ensure that the preventive role of anti-corruption is activated and very pronounced. That would mean that at the administrative level, in the civil and public service, there is no room for anyone to navigate any state. If we fill all those gaps, ensure that nobody is doing the wrong thing, this would definitely manifest in our results. But as we have continued and judging from the data so far and knowing that some of these data sources take up to 24 months, we should be careful and tread cautiously.
Right.
But we can make gains, just like I have said. We should continue to persevere in our reportage of corruption, and also then those who do investigations should also be doing it, and those who are prosecuting should do it as quickly as they can to ensure that we are making gains. Otherwise, we cannot.
Okay.
We cannot, judging from the data we have.
All right. I want to thank you very much for your time with us. Mary Addah is Programs Manager at the Ghana Integrity Initiative. They are Ghana's local partners for Transparency International.